So, welcome to Leadership Unlearned and Reframed. In this podcast, we invite you to take up your leadership mantle. When I speak about leadership, I'm not only speaking about a role in an organization. It could be in your family. We do need leadership in our families. It could be in your community. It could be in your place of worship or even on your local football team. This program invites you to rethink all that you've known about leadership. And because we're taking away, we don't want to leave you without. So we're also offering a reframe of leadership. Maybe you'd hear something from our guest today. Our guest is Toney Olton. Maybe there's a question that what we're speaking about may raise for you. Whatever it is, we invite you to think about your leadership, making a difference, bringing an impact that only you can do in this world. So, welcome to our program today, and welcome, Toney, to our program.
Thank you. Thank you, most kindly. It is an absolute pleasure to reconnect with you and to share this space a moment with you.
Yeah, I like that. And Tony and I connected many, many years ago. We're both
Yes, yes,
facilitators, and Tony has
yes.
been doing his thing for a while. And so, Tony, tell us about some of the things that you've been up to.
We're trying to change the world. The, the usual advice we give is that you change the world one person at a time. We've stepped up. We're trying to change the world one country at a time.
Mm,
We back on March 3rd, we launch what we intend to be a major national initiative. Since 2019, we've experienced an unusual spike in the incidence of murder and gun violence. And given the exposure and experience and the training and the reading that I've had and the conversations I've had in terms of emotional intelligence, I'm persuaded that emotional intelligence and as a construct and all the tools that we have access to can be a powerful answer, solution to the challenges that we're experiencing. So only this morning I was on the radio, one of our radio stations, with a very good friend who hosts a program. He hosts Wednesdays on that particular radio station, a typical call-in program. We ran a number of programs for individuals. We're getting ready now to launch our fifth or sixth teacher training, where we're introducing social emotional learning to educators to get them to be better able to facilitate their students in their own development of emotional intelligence. So we've got a number of things going on.
yeah, a
All,
number
all,
of
all
big
for a
things.
good cause.
Yeah, but
All
it
for a
sounds
good
like a
cause.
number of big things. And so I want to go back to a few things that you shared there in that little
Mm,
sentence. It's a huge sentence, actually. One, for
mm,
people who don't know, he's talking about Barbados. Tony is from
yeah,
Barbados, right?
that's
So when
right.
he says we and what
Uh,
we're doing,
Otherwise known as paradise.
absolutely, I can attest to that. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. So when Tony is talking, he's talking about Barbados. And
Barbados, yeah.
I can't help but notice the shift from, one person at a time to one country at a time. So that's a huge
Yes.
shift. So I'd be
Yes.
interested in knowing about what was behind that shift. And now that you've shifted, what looks different for you?
Okay. So what's behind that shift is that I'm only one person. I can only be in one place at a time. So over the last 5 years, I developed a very small team. We have about 6 persons who we work with very closely. So the six of us can be in 6 different places at the time. But the challenge is so profound, so pervasive, that it's going to take more than the six of us. We would need to have 5 or 6 lifetimes to be able to have that kind of national impact. So we've switched out from just a workshop, a 1 day workshop, or a 1 week workshop, or whatever it is we're doing, a 2 hour this or 4 hour that. How do we now transfer what we know? How do we now transfer the tools that we have access to, the frameworks and the tools that we have access to a mass of persons? So, for example, one of the elements of the program we designed, we have a meeting coming up on Friday with one of the government departments responsible for summer camps. Government some years back made this decision that at summer they will support and sponsor any number of organizations and individuals who are running summer camp. Typically, what we've been doing, we've been invited to come in and speak to summer camp A or summer camp B for half an hour or an hour. And we said, no, let's switch it out. before the camps, let us engage the camp directors and the camp counselors. Let us introduce them to the whole concept of emotional intelligence and social and emotional learning. So that when they're engaging the campers are experiencing persons who are themselves are practicing emotional intelligence. Because when we talk about social and emotional learning, there are two approaches. There is the implicit approach and there's the explicit approach. So the implicit approach we find is more powerful. That is where I, as a teacher, as a counselor, as a camp director, I show up and the student is going left or, is how do I engage? How do I help that camper, or in the case of the school, how do I help that student to understand there's a different way to think, a different way to feel, and a different way to act? Because the way you're currently thinking, feeling, and acting isn't going to produce meaningful or sustainable results in your life.
Mm.
So I don't teach that by saying, A, B, C, one, two, three. I teach that just by the nature of who I am and how I engage.
Yeah.
I teach that because I practice empathy. So I seek to understand where the camp is coming from first. And perhaps for the first time in their lives, those campers are engaging someone who listens,
Hmm.
who listens to understand. That mere experience can create a shift in that camper or that student's mind. So our approach is, yes, we can do this for the rest of our lives. How do we what is the multiplier effect? If we can get the majority of teachers in school, if we get the majority of persons who are hosting camps to themselves become practitioners, aware of and practitioners of emotional intelligence. And just simply, as I said before, because of who they are, how they show up, and how they engage, they're having a tremendous impact. Because we know that all learning takes place at an unconscious level. Yeah.
Yeah. And so just a few things there, right? So what I'm hearing is that you multiplied your impact. Got six people, like-minded individuals. So it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be Tony alone. It could be six people in six different places having that impact.
Mm.
And
How
then,
do we make that 1,000
yes, a
persons?
thousand. Yes, go for
Yes.
it. Add those numbers
Yes.
up. And then I'm
Yes.
thinking about in terms of, so that's scaling in terms of the provision side. And I'm
Yes.
also
Yes.
hearing you scaling it on the delivery side. And the scaling
Yes.
and delivery is not about how many more people can teach this, but how many more people can embody this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. And facilitate that unconscious learning.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
So what I'm really hearing is that you're using awareness of social intelligence, of emotional
Mm.
intelligence. So raising the
Mm.
awareness of the providers so that when they
Mm.
stand in front of their charges, that they will
Mm.
be what we call being what's missing in the system.
Yes. 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 Powerful models.
Yes.
Yeah. I like the quotation that says that in any situation, be the light, not the judge. Be the model, not the critic.
Yes.
Yes.
And so what has been the acceptance or the resistance with this methodology?
I think the acceptance is, yeah, this makes sense. The resistance, if I can call it resistance, is who's going to pay for it?
Mm,
It isn't a nice, bright, shiny object that you can put on the wall, hang on your credenza. It is not a building. You talk about changing people's lives. So the results are not going to be seen. They're not instant results. This is generational because the challenge we are experiencing is generation. We have definitely two, possibly three generations that have lost touch with the fundamentals of life. We're going to call them the fundamentals of life. Yeah. That there are certain fundamental principles or laws that govern life. The most fundamental is the law of the harvest. This whole question of process. We have certainly two generations that have grown up understanding instant. So that when I was a boy, you had to leave where you were and go and literally turn the switch to turn on the television, walk back, have a seat, and wait for the television to. Those in the black and white days, you will not have had those days. Yeah. Today, I think children have a vague idea that there's something called a cow, and you have to milk the cow. But if you want milk, you go to the fridge. Yeah. Uh, 30, 40 years ago, chances are when you wanted milk, you went with your father, bought the cow at the barn, you saw him milk it, then you had to boil it. So that lots of our children are struggling because they don't understand process. They understand whatever I want it now. I mean, that is all around us. And the minute they hit roadblock, the minute it doesn't go straight from A to B or A to Z, can't cope. So they're not resilient, they're not creative. Yeah. And importantly, they don't understand the importance of relationships.
Well,
Right?
yeah, I mean
Um,
that's the the last
they
one
don't
that
understand the
struck a
importance.
chord with me in
Yeah,
part.
they don't understand the importance of relationships. And what relationships they have, they're very superficial. It's all about likes, how many likes they can get. Or somebody friends you on, one of these social media platforms. So empty and so vague, so void. Yeah. So yeah, that's where we are. We're trying to change that dynamic. Working to change, not trying, we're working to change that dynamic.
Yeah. So tell me, how would the emotional intelligence, how would it help with those skills that were lost for these generations? You spoke about two generations are changing. You just gave some examples of, what's different from
Mhm.
your lifestyle versus the lifestyle
Mhm.
now. And so what will emotional intelligence bring to these people who
Mhm.
don't have it? In terms of,
So I need to go back.
yeah, go right ahead.
Emotional intelligence is not new.
No, it's not.
It's not new. It is a new framework that we're using. See, but three, four, five generations back, you learned emotional intelligence implicitly. You saw a grandmother, you chances are you were raised by a grandmother. In Barbados, it was something called the Civic. That was an organization where she would put down money every week or whatever rotation she had. And at Christmas time, you got here's the old-fashioned word. You got your Christmas frock. Yes.
Indeed.
So come December, whatever date, your grandmother will go down to the Civic, take off these funds, take care of business. Our grandparents, our great grandparents were very poor people. Yet they built houses
Hmm.
and owed no one for them. They sent their 10, 12 children to school at personal sacrifice. You were learning emotional intelligence. What we today call emotional intelligence, you were learning. Yeah? Chances are you were raised by a grandmother who taught you when stuff happens, count to 10.
Hmm.
She had no idea of the research that says that the chemical response that we call an emotion only has a life of 3 to 6 seconds. None. But she learned when stuff happens, don't respond, count to 10. What today we call consequential thinking used to be called delayed gratification.
Yes.
Yeah? So your question is, how will emotional intelligence as it is constructed today help? So we have to talk about in the model that we use. We associated with 6 seconds. That's the part of our local. That's a six. 6 seconds is the world's largest emotional intelligence network. It's the organization I first trained with in October of 2002. I've since then done any number of their certification programs, and I serve as a volunteer network leader with the organization. Their model is a very powerful model. So let's walk through that. The model starts with three pursuits. They're called pursuits: know self, choose self, and give self. The order is important. Know self is about self-awareness, self-understanding. Choosing self is about getting to a place in your life where you recognize that life is 10% what happens and 90% how you respond. That you can't stop, I call it stuff, you can't stop stuff from happening, but you can choose your response. It's what Covey calls you become a conscious choice maker, that you recognize that every moment of your life is a moment in which you get to make a choice about three things: what to think, what to feel, and what to do. So knowing self is about noticing. Choosing self is about asking yourself, what options do I have? And then giving self is your way. Because my way is going to inform which of those options I go with, or what combination of those options I go with. Because the choice I go with is to move me towards the outcome that I said I want, the way that I said that I want. So I must know myself. I must know myself, then become a conscious choice maker, choose myself, and have a reason for the choices I'm making. So I'm not just a referee. I'm not just reacting. I'm very intentional, very deliberate, very strategic. Yeah. Each of those pursuits has an associated set of skills. Skills, critical. Skills meaning that they are learnable. So it doesn't matter where I am meeting you. If the desire is there, you can develop the skill of whatever the skill is. Yeah? So each of the three pursuits has an associated set of skills. The first is the whole question of emotional literacy. Emotional literacy is the ability to identify, name emotions, to be able to talk about your emotions, to be able to appropriately express your emotion. Yeah? Here's what we teach. It says if you can name your emotion, you can tame your emotion. Wow. The power in that is that I have this emotion. When I become the observer, I'm no longer my emotion. I can stand back. I can stand apart from it and become its observer. What's driving this? Where is this coming from? What is the message? What is it telling, alerting me about? Maxine, you must know that I'm really disappointed. I can express it. I don't have to cower. I don't have to go to my room. I don't have to sulk. I don't have to brood. I don't have to cut my eye.
Mm-hmm.
Maxine, I am really, really disappointed. Or, Maxine, I'm really excited. I'm happy for you. I can express. I am literate with my emotions. Yeah? Critical skill. What does that mean? That means that I'm less likely to strike out. Because something's going on with me. If I don't understand it, I'll hit.
Mm-hmm.
I'll curse. Because I don't have yet language. And you know what happens? What happens as a result in relationships? Yeah? Because it means we're always going to be. That's skill number one, no self. Skill number two, no self, is recognizing your own patterns. We are creatures of habit. Most of our functioning comes out of our subconscious mind. So I could very well be saying and doing in ways that are injurious to our relationship, but I'm blissfully ignorant because that's who I am. I'm quite sure you've heard that, but you know me. Recognizing patterns is about understanding what of my thinking, feeling, and behaving is allowing me to be effective, and what of my thinking, feeling, and behaving is undermining my effectiveness with myself and with others. So I recognize my patterns. So the first two skills have to do with your self-awareness, self-knowing, self-understanding. The next four skills have to do with your choosing self. The first of these is I think before I act. I think consequentially. I always contemplate not just the response, but the outcome. And it's the outcome and outcome that I can live with, want to live with. So that I will have an emotional response that may lead me towards a particular thinking, fin of thinking and acting. Ah, but that's going to produce an outcome that I'm not going to be able to live with. There's an interesting video that I find is powerful. Can't tell you what the name of the movie, but there's a little clip that we use in our work. So this counselor coach, she's in a prison and she's engaging prisoners. Here's the question. What was the length of time between the emotion and your response? And the camera pans around the room. First one says split second. Here's the second question. How long have you been in prison? 15 years. 10 seconds. How long have you been in prison? 7 years. And like 4 or 5, 6 or 7 people responded to the two questions. Powerful. In other words, something has happened. I have an emotional response. I react in a moment in time that causes me to lose significant chunks of my life. If I think consequentially, if I engage in consequential thinking, I will have the emotion. It's what scripture calls, it says, be angry, yet do the right thing. Say no. Remember, I said the way to go that emotional intelligence is not new. It says, here's what scripture says. It says, do not let the sun go down on your wrath. Regulate yourself. Yeah. Consequential thinking. The next note is to navigate emotions. Stuff is going to happen. You can't stop stuff from happening. My grandmother used to say, people are very. Full stop. She left it there. People are very. Yeah. You can put on whatever adjective you want after that. So stuff is going to happen. You're going to have this emotional response. How long are you going to linger? Are you going to brood and sulk for the rest of the day, for the rest of the week, for the rest of your life? You know, I was doing a teacher workshop some years ago, and we did in one of our opening exercises, we asked you to think of, we put up a list of emotions, and you asked to choose one. We do a list of unpleasant and a list of unpleasant emotions. Notice I didn't say negative or positive. And this particular teacher, I noticed she was a little bit unsettled, let's use that term. So I went over and I engaged her. So we know everybody's part of the conversation. The emotion that she chose had to do with an experience that was 19 years old. She'd had this experience 19 years, but choosing the emotion and talking about it 19 years later was just as alive as 19 years ago. She had not yet been able to successfully navigate. Too many people live in pain, in suffering, yeah, because they're not able to navigate their emotions.
Yeah.
Me this, daddy this, you know, my mother's boyfriend, my uncle, somebody did me something,
Yeah.
and I can become locked into that experience. That experience shapes how I engage others for the rest of, I engage life for the rest of my life. So being able to navigate your emotions is critical. So the awareness that an emotion only has a life of 3 to 6 seconds tells me that if I hold on to an emotion for longer than 6 seconds, that's on me. That's not on you.
Yeah.
So am I going to choose? Am I going to choose myself, or am I going to surrender my power to you and that experience? So navigating emotions is a critical element of the model. Next is to be able to engage in intrinsic motivation. Have I gotten myself to a place, or how do I get myself to a place where I'm able to get myself up every morning? The analogy I use is How do I get myself to a place where I can function like a Timex watch? Not quite sure if you've heard the Timex has a slogan, a tagline. You know what it is? No? Timex! We take a licking and keep on ticking.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I can do that if there's a compelling way on the inside of me, a reason to get up every morning. How do I change the world? How do I make life different for somebody, somewhere, somehow? Yeah?
Yeah. And when you're engaging with these younger people, well, I want to look at two levels, right? So one would be the counselors, teachers, and the other
Mm.
level will be the actual charges themselves, I guess, as younger
Yes.
people.
Yes.
Which one of those would you find is most missing in both of those systems?
It is equal.
It's equal.
It's equal, yeah.
And what is it?
When we do our teacher workshops, there are three questions we ask at the front end. What are the emotions showing up most in your students? What are the emotions showing up most amongst your faculty? What are the emotions necessary for learning to take place? Invariably, the emotions being reported on behalf of teachers and on behalf of students are the same.
And what are they? So, Tony, based on what you shared, what are you seeing in the providers, like the teachers and the caregivers, and what are you seeing in the children that give you data that this is needed?
Good. So since 2019, and with the exception of 2020, I believe, we have run summer courses for educators. And we asked three questions at the top end of our engagement. What are the emotions showing up most amongst your students? One. Two, what are the emotions showing up most amongst faculty? And three, what are the emotions necessary for learning to take place?
Hmm.
Obviously in the classroom, yeah?
Yeah.
For students and for educators, the emotions showing up the most are essentially the same. And that is why learning is not taking place
And what are they?
efficiently.
What are they?
What are they? Okay. So I'm about to reference my slide.
Yeah, sure, that's fine.
So this is um, from one specific cohort. So the top five emotions are the most amongst the students: boredom, anger, frustration, anxiety, depression.
Yeah, sounds like when I was a kid. Yeah. Spot on.
The emotion, the emotions showing up most amongst faculty: indifference, frustration, disappointment, anxiety.
Wow.
So students are showing up for school not emotionally ready. Educators are turning up for school emotionally challenged.
Yeah. I want to spend some time on the educators too, because and I think it bothers me, right?
Hmm.
The word indifference, frustration, disappointment, because
Hmm.
those are words that really are about a response to something external.
Yes.
And it
Yes.
goes back to what you
So,
were sharing before
hmm.
about how do you show up when this is what you're embodying when you spoke about implicit
Hmm.
learning.
Right. So schools today are no longer what they were certainly when I was a boy at school. So for one, teachers no longer feel they have the support of policymakers. They no longer feel they have the support of parents and guardians.
Mhm.
And children certainly, for the most part, aren't coming to school ready to learn. They're teaching subjects that for the students are dry. They're not getting the responses from their students, that excitement about learning. So what am I doing here? So for many of our educators, unfortunately, as I suppose is true for many people in the world of work, this is how I pay my bills. This is how I take care of my mortgage. We were part of a project back in 2014, got some funding for a national project back in 2014. We were shocked because part of the orientation, we were told that 30% of the students who enter secondary school leave secondary school without any certification. And 30% of those, sorry, yeah, 30% leave school without any certification because they have not taken the exam, any exam, final exam. And 30% of those who take exams leave school without having passed any certificates. So that is a significant disconnect. And you understand that because the third question asks, what are the emotions necessary for learning to take place? Curiosity, passion, trust, and joy, which don't show up in the other two
Yeah,
lists.
it's not there.
They're not
Yeah.
there.
You know, I wanted so my experience of school, which was many years ago, and I was bored most of the times in school, depressed and definitely angry. And I think that's just from
Mhm.
the depression and the anger would be from home, right? In terms of not having
Mhm.
power and all those things. And I'm just imagining a child now, from the time they wake up, their phone is in their hand. They have communities that are online. I mean, they could find anything and anything you want, they could find it. To
And
go to this,
AI exacerbates because I don't have to think anymore. I just have to ask the question, I get the answer.
yes, and I agree with you. And going to school must be such a disappointment. I have a
Yes.
3-year-old, I have my nephew's 5,
Mhm.
and he says it every day. He says school is boring. There's
Yes.
nothing wrong with him. Cognitively,
Mhm.
he asks great questions. We can have a conversation, and he is bored in school at 5.
Yes. Because we have been locked into a system that has long lived its usefulness.
I quite agree. I quite
Long lived
and
its usefulness. Right?
yeah,
And part of that system is a system that at age 10 and a half, 11, begins the streaming of who's good and who's not good.
yeah,
So we are significantly undermining the opportunities or the potential for students to live their potential
yeah. And I'm just
because
thinking,
we've not been able to adapt.
yeah, and I'm thinking about, this really speaks about how critical it is for the emotional intelligence to be there. Because
Yes.
we
So how
already
do I?
go
Oh,
ahead.
go on. Mhm. No, so how do I, as a teacher, turn up, an educator, turn up and challenge the system?
Yeah, yeah,
You know, how
yeah,
do I show up in my geography class or my French class and figure out how do I help children to see this as something that is valuable in their life?
yeah,
Or am I slavishly following the curriculum?
yeah. Or not,
And,
not
and
even
age
if
and
e-
age or lesson plan.
yeah. And even if I'm following the curriculum, how do I make it exciting for these kids who,
Yes,
when
yes,
they go home, they're in a totally different world and learning environment, who learns
yes.
totally different from the way I learned.
Okay.
And
Mhm.
I think that is where for me, well, two things, right? I mean, these words that are used for the teachers, the indifference, the frustration, the disappointment, is not about the here and now.
Mhm.
It suggests to me that there's a lot of work that needs to be cleaned up for them
Yes,
on a personal level.
yes, absolutely,
And I can
absolutely.
see where it is that the positive intelligence will make a difference because you spoke about awareness, right? Being able
Mhm.
to name that emotion, say what it is, how it's impacting you. Then that
And that it is okay to have the emotion.
it's perfectly okay. Yeah, that's what we are. We
Yes,
are
yes,
emotional
yes,
beings, right?
yes. Mhm.
And then to make a
Yes.
choice
Mhm.
and have some sort of
Abo-
processing and some sort of processing going on around this. And then three,
mhm.
how do I act or not act?
Yes,
Right. So,
yes,
because we know that hurt people.
yes.
And I'm
Mhm.
thinking if that this is the state of our educators, then that hurt is being there passed on every day, which makes what
Yes,
you're saying about the implicit emotional intelligence and passing
Yes,
it
yes,
on the way your granny passed it on is
yes.
critical right now because these
Very,
people
very
are
critical.
not in the state that your granny was in.
Yes, yes. You're right. You're right. And then how do we help the parents? Because part of our program, our design, is we have to engage parents
You must.
because they have to reinforce the learning that is taking place in the school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, too, I'm sure you've seen like me, where sometimes when children learn something that is so different from what the household knows, the household says, "That's crap. Don't bring that here
Yes.
again. We're
Yeah,
not
yeah,
doing
yes,
it."
yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
definitely
And so
that
you're shut down.
shut down or you split, right? Because it's like in school I could be like this, but when I'm home, I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yes, yes, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Which then leads to this, all the experiences we're having with depression and yeah, all the mental challenges that our kids are showing up with these days.
Well, yeah, and since 2020, I think kids who went through that, people between the ages of maybe 8 and 15 who were in that 2020, 2021
Mhm.
pandemic, endemic, whatever you want to call it, but it wreaked havoc on a particular age group. And I think one thing
Mhm.
that you started out saying was about this question of resilience. And
Mhm.
my observations of people who are now maybe between 13 and 15 is that they have very little resilience.
Very, very little this way. Yeah.
Everything is a catastrophe. And the good thing
Yes.
about them is
Yeah.
that they really know how to show their emotions. They are attuned with depression, they're attuned
Yes.
with social pressure,
Yeah.
and a lot of other
Emotionally
skills.
aware.
Yeah,
Emotionally
it doesn't mean that
aware,
they're aware,
but
but they're attuned.
lacking in the regulation.
Yeah. So that's I really want to support this because I'm seeing it, right? We see it. And one of the words that you use as well is empathy.
Empathy. Yeah. Which is sadly missing. But again, if so we didn't complete all of these skills, but empathy is skill number 7.
So
So
low
there's
down.
6 skills. Yes. And importantly so, because there are 6 skills prior to number 7. And those 6 skills have to do with you in relationship with yourself.
And I need to give myself empathy as well, right? I think very often people miss with empathy by looking out. But I think the
Yes.
biggest thing about empathy is looking in.
In,
Because
yes.
the self-forgiveness to say, I made a mistake and it's okay, it's not the end of the world, I'm not the most horrible person. And
Hmm.
silencing, you spoke about a judge, silencing the judge as well. I think that
Yeah.
empathy for me, like for me, my personal thing is that empathy, be gentle with myself.
Self, yes.
Yeah,
And
that
I can't extend that to others if I've not first extended it to myself.
exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
And
So the
that's why a
model,
lot of us give sympathy, right? Because we don't know what
yes,
empathy is.
yes, yes. So the model is very complete and it's continuous. It's
Yeah.
a constant self-knowing, self-choosing, and a self-giving. Constant.
Love it.
And that you got it right yesterday doesn't mean you're gonna get it right today.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Except you're practicing awareness and intentionality.
Yeah. So this, I'm just thinking of how fortunate these educators, these kids, these parents can be if they really chose to pick this up. You know, it sounds very powerful. And
It
I can
is.
understand why it is that you're saying, one nation at a time, because it is a
Mhm.
powerful game changer.
Mhm.
What do you think are
That's
some
what
of the limits to it, if any?
ah, I suppose the major limit is the funding because obviously this consumes time and human resources. Yeah. Um, we want to produce video content. That's going to come at a cost. We have already invested in the equipment to do that. So our major challenge now is the funding to make it happen. So we continue to carry the torch, self-funded. A lot of it's our own time that we put into it. But they say the longest journey begins with the first step. I think the challenge for us is to be consistent, is to put ourselves in front of as many listeners, persons who will hear us as we can. And you never know. You never know. When I was young, um, I spent 15 years in the insurance business, 7 of them in sales, 8 in management. But as a salesman, I remember my manager, my mentor, he wants, must have been a video. I don't think it was a description. I think it was a video. The person was making the point. You know, that if you have a hammer, you're trying to get a nail through a wall, you know, the first one, they might fly, sparks are going to fly. He said, but if you're consistent, there comes a point in time in which it goes right through. So in my head, we are currently, we've just been punching at the wall, trying to,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's where we are.
Yeah. I'm happy you have a team around you because that
Mm.
knocking on that wall could really lead to disappointment, some
Yes, yes, yes,
frustration, you know.
yes, yes, yes.
I know
No.
you'd never be indifferent, but I could see how some
Yeah,
emotions could
yeah, yeah.
creep through.
So, but fortunately for me, I've had the life experiences I've had. If you knew of me between age, I'd say 13 and age probably 30, I should not be doing this. I should not be in the position. I should not be enjoying what I currently enjoy, the roles that I have, the exposure that I have.
Tell
Shouldn't
me
be.
more.
Well, truth be told, I was a significant underperformer in secondary school.
Mm,
Just did well enough to get a job in the teaching service when I left school. Um, I don't think I really came into my own until in my late 20s, very late 20s.
yeah.
Yeah. But I've seen what happens when you get to a point in your life where you have focus. Yeah. In the year in which I was going to be 40, I was 39 years, 5 months. Um, I made a decision about the rest of my life. I said I want the second half of my life to be far, far superior to the first half. That was it.
Mm,
And so I've just set out since that moment in time to be that person.
yeah.
So the courses I've done, the books I've read, the things I attend, the people I engage are all part of that larger construct that I said I want the second half to be far superior to the first half. Does it mean I've gotten everything right? Nope, not at all. But I've been more consistent,
Yeah, it means you've been intentional and deliberate
very
in
intentional
how you show
and
up, where
deliberate.
you show up, who you show up with.
Yes,
That's what I'm
yes,
hearing.
yes. So I've gotten down here and how are you doing? I'm at peace.
Mm,
Not perfect, but I'm at peace
yeah,
because I am doing the best that I can with what I know and the resources that I have.
yeah. It sounds
So I'm at
like a
peace.
moment of high emotional intelligence, being
Working on it.
aware of who you are, choosing
Yeah.
what you want to do, and then taking the actions.
And giving stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
sounds like you've really looking at that loop that you explained for us, and you're really living from that loop.
From that. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's my story.
Well, that's part of your story that you shared with us today. Part of your story. I
Part
feel
of my
that
story.
13 to 30-year-old, I think there's some
Mm.
excitement there, but it's not the time and place for that, but we'll get
Yes.
to
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Definitely. Yes,
Mm.
I guess the word that comes up for me is noble.
Mm.
It is a noble.
Actually, that is skill number 8.
There you go. So you're
Skill
just
number
like
eight.
kicking. Yeah.
Skill
Tell
number
us
eight is
about
pursue
noble
noble.
and tell us about noble as
Skill
well.
number 8 is to pursue a noble goal.
Mm,
So here's what we say: a noble goal points outward.
mm,
A noble goal is larger than yourself.
yes.
A noble goal you cannot achieve in your lifetime. So that thing that you've committed to is larger than yourself. And that's where you need to bring people on who can know,
Yeah.
to whom you can now pass the baton.
Yeah. So we're seeing it live, right? We're seeing an embodiment of these principles,
Mhm.
choices made on them. And
Mhm.
I guess for me, one of the things that strikes me is your acceptance that this will not be done in my lifetime.
Damn it. Yeah.
And there's a kind of letting go and humility around that.
Absolutely. You have
Yeah.
to. You have to.
Yeah.
You know, one of my team members, he's the person setting up, we've asked to set up the conversation with the responsible ministry and the camp directors. So he's done all the legwork. He came back to me this week. He came back to me. He called me. He called me last night. Oh, no, he called me the night before to say to me, he sent me this email and it has this and it has that and da, 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 da. So I said, no. I said, no. You've done all the legwork. Get back and sign off to the date and the time and we're good to go. Because he now has to create his own presence in that space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, knowing that that's what I'm chasing, refusing to accept his invitation to complete the journey, no, that's your project. Just finish it off.
Yeah. I think that that's an important piece that you just shared there, that knowing that the journey is not yours to complete, it
Mm.
seems like it's easier for you to let it go.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah. Um, and his is a very interesting story because he did our program in 2020, just before COVID. Shy, shy, shy. He was. We now call him Dr. Google. He now leads our research team.
Yeah.
You know, I can discuss an idea with him. He come back to me with all the content because he studied it, he's worked out, he's done the research, and bam, puts it on my desk
Mhm.
in 5 years.
Mhm. Yeah.
In fact, we ran an online course, um, which he carries. I did two with him, and he know carries.
Yeah.
Yes. There's one of our ministries asked us to do some training with young people in what they call the Word of Work program.
Mhm.
And there was a moment that they came to me and it didn't fit my schedule. So I passed them on to another team member. I've not done the program since.
Yeah.
And that's what it means to have a noble goal, because it's larger than myself.
Yeah.
So how do I create experiences so that they themselves develop that confidence and that confidence?
Yeah. And I think looking at it this way, I'm just thinking about in organizations, some leaders don't want to give up. They don't want to train their people. If there's an
Mm.
invitation for dinner every night, they go every night and then they complain.
Yes, yes,
And I'm wondering if the difference is understanding that legacy is not created with you, it's created when
mm.
you leave.
Yes, 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 yes. Here's what I say to leaders. Think of yourself happily retired. You're 75. You're sitting in your patio, you have friends over for drinks or like me. And there's a story for the organization you once led. And the story is led by some member of the team who is now the CEO or some senior manager. How much of you is in that person? What is it about that person that you're most proud of?
Yeah,
Knowing that you contributed to that. Yeah.
their
So
development. Yeah.
they developed it. Yeah. That's what legacy is about.
Yeah.
Where you're long off the scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're
Uh,
along off the scene, what are you hoping for will be your impact in this program that you spoke about today?
that somehow I help that person or those persons to grow. You know? When I finished the radio program today, my partner sent me a note. um, let me. I must say, the more I hear, I must say, the more I hear, the more I become aware. Right? Lord, help me to take heed. Yeah. Yeah. How is her life different?
Mhm.
Because she got to share some of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's
And I'm the beneficiary. I'm the beneficiary when I was 23, a very good friend of mine introduced me to Toastmasters. Coming out of that, one night I was at club and got to be talking with another member who was himself in the insurance business, who persuaded me to come and join the insurance industry. I spent 7 years in his company. He passed about 5 years ago. I never, ever miss an opportunity to call his name. Because what you see in me today, the way I think, the way I function, to a significant degree, is because I got to spend 7 years with a man called Charles Anthony Patterson, a Trinidadian actually.
Yes, I know the name, yeah.
Charles Anthony Patterson.
Mhm.
Yeah, taught me a lot of stuff. So I am part of his legacy.
Yeah, so you have experienced it, what it looks like when it's passed on, and it
Yes,
sounds like you're intentionally and deliberately doing the same.
same thing. Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's why I'm at peace.
That's why you're at peace. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm at peace. I'm at peace.
So
Doesn't mean
we've
everything is perfect,
yeah.
but I'm just at peace.
Yeah, perfection is a myth anyway.
Yes.
Life is supposed to be messy. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting where we've come. Because you started the conversation really looking out in terms of what you were doing in terms of this
Mhm.
bringing emotional intelligence into schools where educators
Mhm.
could learn it and learn how to embody it, and definitely to the children, teenagers, whatever the age group would
Mhm.
be, so that they could learn how to process their emotions.
Mhm.
Very stunning for me was, and it's stunning and I guess reflective of what I have been observing, what it is that those words are for the teachers in terms of, the
Mhm.
frustration, the disappointment, the indifference, as well as for the
Mhm.
students, right? The boredom, the anger,
Mhm.
the frustration, the anxiety, the depression.
Mhm.
And I'm just thinking about how much those words are actually showing up in from my observations.
Mhm.
And that bringing this sense of emotional intelligence to help people figure out how they're feeling, being able to say, this is what I'm feeling, and not necessarily acting out from it,
Right.
because that not knowing what it is has a total feeling
His
altogether.
own. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yes.
knowing what
Mhm.
it is gives you that element of control, making that choice and then moving into action. And I'm just thinking
Mhm.
how it sounds simple, but we know it's a lot of tears that gets us there. And how powerful it will be for both teachers and their students to be able to learn this. So we
Mhm.
started out talking about that, and we sort of came back to the individual, i.e., you,
Mhm.
understanding some of the things that really makes you tick and why it is that this journey is so important for you and for you to get this done, even enrolling other people to magnify your impact. Yeah, so I want to just really congratulate you and celebrate what you're doing
Mhm.
because it
Thank you most
is
kindly.
noble.
Mhm.
It is noble.
Skill number 8
Skill or no
is the
skill, number
last.
8, it's just
It,
noble. And I
is
want you
the
to, Tony, I'm going
last
to
in the
invite you to sit
process.
with it. I want
Mhm.
you to sit with it. Just sit and
Mhm.
recognize that I am really celebrating your nobility.
Thank you most kindly. Yeah. Yeah. Appreciate it.
You're most welcome. I appreciate you sharing
Thanks
with us today.
most kindly for the invitation.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Thank you so much. And best of luck.
Cheers.
Anything I could do to assist, just give me a holler. All right?
Yeah, and I'm really, as I said at the top, I'm really, really happy that we've connected after all of these years.
Yeah, and we'll keep in touch. We'll keep in
Yes,
touch.
please.
So if you want to follow Tony, you can find Tony on
I
LinkedIn.
did. Oh, if you follow me, sorry. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, following you, not me. It's about you. Where can we
Yeah.
find you, Tony? On LinkedIn for
So
sure.
I'm on LinkedIn. I am also on Facebook. They're my two principal ones.
Okay, fine.
I don't do a lot of posting, but I do. Yes, the easy way to contact me is through LinkedIn or through
Yeah.
Facebook.
So send him a note. If you have some funds for this project, absolutely contact him.
Yes.
And yeah, we'll keep in touch, Tony. So we'll keep in touch. Yeah.
Cheers. All the best.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay.